Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LL3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mango, South Florida, and today's date is Sunday, December 20th, 2020. Don't get stressed out in the Christmas shopping, right? Hanukkah and all that. Well, I'm just kicking back. Windy day here in Fort Lauderdale. Oh, it's by the New River. So, I'm not going to do any more ranting. I'm not going to do any rants, excuse me. I'll do a narrated article, which came out last night by LifeSiteNews.com. It's entitled, Is the Coronavirus a Bioweapon? This is by Stephen Mosher. No less a figure than Dr. Francis Ball, an expert on biowarfare, believes that the coronavirus that we're dealing with here is an offensive biological warfare weapon. Speaking of Wuhan's Institute of Virology, which is at the epicenter of the epidemic, he added that there have been previous reports of problems with that lab and things leaking out of it. For Dr. Ball to be correct, the CCP would have to have both the intention and the capability to develop such a bioweapon. Does it? It is no secret that Chinese Communist regime, despite being a signatory to the Biological Weapons Convention, regards the development of bioweapons as a key part of achieving military dominance. The Vice President of China's Academy of Military and Medical Science, He Fushu, said in 2015 that biomaterials were the new strategic commanding heights of warfare. PLA General Zhang Shibo went even further in his 2017 book, War's New Highland, claiming that modern biotechnology development is gradually showing a strong signs of characteristic of an offensive capability, including potential for specific ethnic genetic attacks. Reflect on the phrase specific ethnic genetic attacks for a minute. What General Zhang is talking about, to be perfectly clear, is bioweapons that kill other races but for which people who look like him have a natural or acquired immunity. Such a weapon would, if potent enough, decimate the populations of Europe, South Asia, and the Americas without firing a shot, leaving an open field for Chinese domination. Those who might counter that one wild-eyed general does not necessarily speak for the communist leadership should bear in mind that Zhang himself is part of that leadership. He was a full member of the 18th Central Committee from 2012 to 2017. And is a former president of the National Defense University. Does COVID-19 cause more serious infections among non-Chinese races? It's hard to say, since almost all the information coming out of China is fabricated for political purposes, but we can't rule out the possibility. It is at least curious that, while it's party time in Wuhan, many U.S. states and European countries are locking down again. So far as intentions are concerned, I think the evidence is indisputable that the PRC would develop offensive biological weapons targeted at other races if they could. But can they? What do we know about China's genetic engineering capabilities? What we know that China has mastered CRISPR technology, which enables the kind of gene splicing that is needed to create a biological superweapon. After all, it was a Chinese scientist, He Zhengqiu, who announced that he had re-engineered the human genome to make it resistant to HIV, a feat for which he recently received a 3-year prison sentence. If you are intent upon genetically engineering offensive biological warfare weapons, you also need a very secure facility to ensure that they do not escape from containment. After all, you are taking dangerous pathogens like SARS, Ebola, and various strains of coronavirus and trying to make them even more deadly. China only has one such level 4 microbiology lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and is located in, you guessed it, in the city of Wuhan. Finally, in addition to the technology and the facilities, you need to You need raw biomaterial. This means laying your hands on the most deadly viruses to be found in nature, into which you can engineer characteristics that make it even more deadly. Some ways of doing this include enhancing human-to-human transmission of a virus originally harvested from another species, or increasing the latency period before someone is infected begins to show symptoms. Here we have incontrovertible evidence that the Wuhan lab has acquired some of the most deadly coronaviruses on the planet. It is worth noting that just last year, two Chinese nationals, husband and wife team, Dr. Qiding Chang and Dr. Xingyu Qiu, were removed from the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as part of an intellectual property theft investigation. The lab is Canada's only level 4 microbiology lab, which is to say is the same type of lab the Chinese operated in Wuhan. Dr. Qiu is known for working on the Ebola virus, while her husband has published studies of SARS. The RCMP investigation noted that both made frequent trips back to the Wuhan lab. The bottom line is that China has everything it needs to create a deadly bioweapon: the technology, the facility, and the raw biomaterial. Much ink has been spilled by the Washington Post and other mainstream media outlets to try to convince us that the deadly coronavirus is a product of nature rather than nefariousness, and anyone who says otherwise is an unhinged conspiracy theorist. Dr. Li Mangyang has published a series of papers proving to the satisfaction of objective observers that the novel coronavirus was not only man-made, but was intended to be used as a bioweapon. She has been predictably attacked by the virology establishment, eager to protect its reputation. They argue that a true bioweapon would be after more lethal, but this proves nothing. The fact that a bioweapon under development does not work as well as intended is not proof that it is not a bioweapon, merely that it is not yet ready to deploy. And bioweapon in the making or not, there seems little doubt that the coronavirus was released from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Propinquity suggests causation. After all, if the first coronavirus infection were a simple result of accidental animal to human transmission as claimed, this could have occurred anywhere in China. How curious that the epicenter of the epidemic just happens to be in a city of 11 million people where China's only level 4 lab is located. Chance? I think not. Another reason to think that what the world is dealing with a bioweapon is a reaction of the communist authorities. Beijing has gone truly extraordinary lengths to cover up the source of the pandemic, the Wuhan lab. They first pointed to the snakes and bats supposedly being sold at the Wuhan seafood market and shut the market down. But it soon came out that snakes do not carry any coronaviruses, and that bats, which do, were not sold at a seafood market. There is one final piece of evidence that, for me, as a China hand, support the theory that the coronavirus is a Chinese bioweapon that was deliberately released upon the world. There is a rumor going around on the Chinese internet that the United States has deliberately unleashed an American bioweapon on the Chinese population. Tellingly, such absurd claims are not being censored by the authorities, while accurate reporting of the epidemic is. It is very much in character for the Communist Party leaders to blame their chief geopolitical rival for crimes that they themselves commit. With their endless lies and evasions, party leaders trying to hide their criminal complicity in the epidemic's origins. For me, as a China watcher, even taking into account the party's penchant for secrecy, the multiple levels of deception engaged in by communist officials over the past year have been extraordinary. You may never know for certain whether the bioweapon known as COVID-19 was deliberately released upon the world, but we do know that the major Western print, broadcast, and social media are doing all their best to dismiss the very possibility as a paranoid fantasy. But, as the old joke goes, it's not paranoia. If they are really out to get you, And on this point, the evidence is clear. We know because PLA generals have told us so, that their researchers are racing to develop lethal bioweapons as fast as their theft of Western technology and stolen virus samples will allow. We also know because these same generals have told us that the goal is to develop bioweapons targeting specific races. There is simply no question that communist leaders have used the pandemic that they have inflicted upon the world as part of their parcel of their strategy for China to replace the USA as a dominant power on the planet. Did they deliberately release it first on their own people? What better way to spread the Chinese virus around the globe than use the Chinese people themselves as unwitting disease vectors? That's the question. I suspect that the only real surprise for the Chinese leadership in the novel coronavirus plague is that China itself has become ground zero for the pandemic that they had hoped one day unleash on other countries. At the same time that America and the rest of the world are dealing with the aftermath of the China virus pandemic, we must be alert to the very real possibility of the future release of an even deadlier pathogen. Does anyone think that communist authorities, once they had perfected a bioweapon to which they themselves had a natural or induced immunity, would hesitate to unleash a deadly pandemic on the West to achieve their China dream of world domination? Those who doubt that the leaders of the Communist Party would use such an assassin's mace need to tell us precisely what moral or ethical considerations would stay their hand, because I think of none. I can think of none. And he's the president of the Population Research Institute. And he does both the things about China and good stuff. And I have to agree. I've been convinced, too, it has been a bioweapon. So I've been saying that for a good period of time when it came out. And did a little, homework and getting information sharing from reporters and all that. I'm convinced it is synthetic that will affect the human race as a whole, including its own people. And they're going to try to find a way to immune only those that will serve them. That's it. But remember, every infection has an Achilles heel. Even if they can do all those vaccines and immune themselves, it can backfire as well. So it is part of a New World Order agenda. They are funded by the globalist bankers, the elite. They're just trying to be the muscle for them, because they have to understand too that the United States, for an example, is a rebel nation, rebel republic. Okay, and the world's waking up on that. So the world's waking up. They're seeing the bigger picture, and they're very ticked off about it. And the beautiful people in that area, they're hurting too from the hands of their filthy government. And don't get me wrong, I'm not lovey-dovey when it comes to that particular institution, even here as well. So, like I said before, government in Latin means control of the mind. Look it up. And don't believe the propaganda matrix on the idiot box and the mainstream garbage or the mainstream garbage media. All right. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or saying something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to the Quorum. Furthermore, I'll leave the footnote of this article on my Spreaker page. And if you want to contact me, you can hit me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com or LokiLuckNumbers03 at ProtonMail.com. And if you want to do a donation, you can hit me at paypal.me/LokiLuck3. And if you want to do a donation to LifeSite News, hit that link of that article and send them some support. All right? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.